And within a relatively short period of time, the Glen electric business in Newry started to prosper, and its big export market was the United Kingdom. But was then hit by a tsunami of problems and issues. Firstly, the oil crisis of 1973-74. And the British government of the day put all factories on a 3-day week. Very shortly thereafter, Britain went cap in hand to the IMF looking for a 25 billion sterling loan to bail it out. And if I roll on through the 90s, operating with businesses on both sides of the border, in the Republic of Ireland we had the famous currency crisis, when there was a dramatic dislocation of currency rates between the Irish pound at the time and different currencies. And interest rates in Ireland, at one stage, overnight interest rates were 100%. 36% of all primary energy consumed in Britain and Ireland is consumed in buildings. Our homes, hotels, hospitals, public buildings, 36% of all energy is consumed in buildings. And 70% of that is consumed in generating heat, cooling and hot water for our sanitary requirements. That's the space we're in. We're in heating and we're in water. So starting with Newry, we've put in a new R&D facility for new water heating systems in Newry. And we've also invested in what I believe is the most exciting technology we've ever developed. It's a new generation of storage heaters, and they will also be made in Portadown. We've also invested in a new production line. The technology is there, but what about the finance? And I can say to you, the finance is also there. If there's a will, if there's an opportunity, finance should be secondary in everything that we do. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much for that, Sean. I should mention that Sean just has flown in from Turkey to be with us here, so I do appreciate the sacrifice that he did to be with us here today too, Sean. Can we move now to Michael Darcy, of Darcy Smyth. Thank you too, Michael, for being with us.
Okay, so I'm very conscious of now being in the speaking role, so watch in front of me. Okay, so, this is the North-South session. Oh yeah, that's not me. So let me start by saying that one of the challenges in this space is to keep your thinking consistent with where the demands are at, so to speak. We heard a lot this morning about the pressures of the international economy and what's changing in the world and how the world is changing. So I'm just going to go on quickly to a table to me that tells a billion stories, actually. It's declining a little bit, but it's kind of holding its own. But Europe is on a decline path. Whereas Asia, look how Asia has come up. And that's the reality now, that the whole dynamic of international economics has changed. And the world economy is reinventing itself in order to adapt to that. And we on this island, indeed the whole European Union in the first instance, and we in this island are particularly challenged to do that. You heard from speakers this morning, and Sean there again, talking about how we're going to do this. Well, we have to play to our strengths, knowledge, experience, insight, etc. But are we going to combine our resources on this island to do it effectively? Well, I think we've got to, frankly. We are a very small number of people, and we're a very small place in the great scheme of things. I mean, one question I always throw out is, what's the population of Vietnam? We all think of that as a small Asian country. It's 89 million. That would make it almost the largest country in Europe, and yet it's small in an Asian context. So I think we really have to combine our resources against that kind of international reality. That takes action. So, what would that be? Design, deliver, I've tried a definition. I think it's always good to start with a definition. Evident opportunity to jointly, that's the key word, jointly, doing things together. Evident opportunities, right? In other words, there's a compelling case to do it. Improve the quality of life, employment prospects, health and well-being of the island's citizens. Too often in discussions about public services and public service provision, there's not enough focus on the citizens themselves, both sides of the border, and then to mutual benefit. things on in terms of the London Dublin accent. Axis. I mean, there's really a new sort of sense of a relationship to be built and developed. I mean, for example, there's a summit meeting in London after which it's announced that the Secretary General of the Irish Government and the head of the UK Civil Service are meeting to take it forward. There's a North-South Ministerial Council meeting, but do you get the same sense of urgency coming out of those meetings? You get throughput, where you build something that's specialist and you get the most number of people to use it. So if you have a specialist centre in some particular niche area of business, like cancer care, it makes a lot of sense to consolidate that in one place. And the second area is today in our online world. I notice no one ever talks about online delivery of learning now. Where the physical place is less important than the capacity of the place to deliver the knowledge by whatever means is available to them. Service is a no-brainer. It is, but that's the National Health Service joining up with the HSE. Both of them utterly focused on internal reforms. You telling me building a bridge between those two is easy? Again, I think the key is bottom-up. Patients. Ultimately, it's about following the patients. If the patient starts crossing the border, then the services must follow. And finally, least we forget, at the end of the day, we have an economic challenge on this island in a lot of people who feel they've no prospect of ever getting a job. And I think not enough effort has gone into that. I think maybe it's time the reconciliation narrative developed into a job creation narrative. I love that quote. What got you here won't get you there. I'm suggesting a prosperity process would help towards the economic well-being of all the island citizens. The challenge for SDLP, it seems, having invested in peace, will you now invest in prosperity? Thank you.
Michael, thanks for that. Indeed, a lot of provocative ideas thrown out to us there, and the challenge is there for us. Can we introduce now Dr. Eoin Magennis of InterTradeIreland?
Just referred to, but also increasingly in the business community there. I think when you look back from the 1990s, over the last 20 years, you've seen massive changes, and people might challenge that, but in a sense, if you look back on where things have come from 20 years ago, there has been a huge change and a huge sea change. I think you got a sense of that in the panel before lunch, some of the speakers there. I mean, in a sense, Northern Ireland doesn't really mean that much as a jurisdiction to them. These are global companies that are operating in all of the second challenge then, and I'll finish with this, is another one is, in a sense, and Alistair McDonald put it very well this morning, we can get lists of achievements of what North-South has done, Almagh, the A road, this road, interconnectors, these sorts of things, the cross-border bodies themselves, and that's fair enough. I think we can that's a kind of sign of maybe where we've come from. In terms of where we go to, I think it has to move, in a sense, beyond just championing the institutions. I work in one, so I would say they're very important, but at the same time, how do we actually drive North-South cooperation onto a more strategic level? Michael Darcy has a few suggestions, and it's a report well worth picking up. But here's an idea. What about if you said InterTradeIreland's going to go on there for 10 years?
Hope we're not doing that for a while yet. Anyway, thank you for that. Thank you for that stimulating contribution there. Can we just ask now, if we move over to Conor, others, for your review.
Thank you, Chairman. I've interpreted my job in the 10 minutes I have to share my perspective working on a local level, and the perspective that's shared by some of the activists here in the room that I work with, among them Peter McAvoy and Jim McCart. It's a view from the local looking upward and outward from a community of citizens and of prospective voters, and this is a policy forum after all. So whatever your perspective here in the room on the North-South agenda, be it rational economics or a political aspiration, in the world of today, all of us are having to re-examine our positions, not just on this, but on the future of our communities and of ourselves. because of the economic and political upheavals happening now across Europe and elsewhere in the world. Today, does economic and political sovereignty really exist, north or south? On this island, 3/4 of the geographical space, the Irish Republic, is having its economic decisions and the political choices it has open to it determined by a troika, so-called. The taxes its citizens will have to pay announced in the Bundestag before they are in the Dáil. And then the other quarter of the island, the Northern Ireland state, is dependent on the exchequer of the UK state. So we consider the future of an island whose people, whose political representatives appear not to be sovereign. And this is a personal view, but for me, Western capitalism has become a delinquent system. Long-termism and planning is largely shunned, and the objective of that system has become, and it's a becoming, it's how it's evolved, not just profit, but profit today, this minute. It's all about short-termism. So forget the concept of an equilibrium between supply and demand. Forget the idea of competition driving change and opening opportunity to the many. Modern capitalism is unrecognisable from what it was just 40 years ago. The link between supply and demand has been lost in a web of derivatives, and the rise of monopolies is increasingly squeezing out entrepreneurship. And the objective of that system has become, and it's a becoming, it's how it's evolved, not just profit, but profit today, this minute. It's all about short-termism. So forget the concept of an equilibrium between supply and demand. Forget the idea of competition driving change and opening opportunity.
Thanks very much for that, Conor. Probably a refreshing, if not a new take on a concept that's been out there. I think from this part of the world, one of the earliest proponents of it and came through the real difficult times and was there whenever social economy and all the academic purpose of it, you were giving it life and practice, Tim. So it's great to see you here. Can we move on to the question and answer session, please? If people could just indicate if they have a question.
I have a question. It's Geraldine Fishardy. I'm particularly interested with Conor being here on what we can do to create additional jobs outside of the Belfast area. Because I think not everybody lives in Belfast, and it's great not to have the commute out to Belfast. And I'm sitting outside Banbridge and commuting regularly to Belfast and Dublin. It would be great to have more in different areas, whether it's the border areas that Michael was talking about earlier, the million people that we need to activate locally to get that region going, or the likes of Newry. So I wouldn't mind hearing a wee bit more from the panel about what they think we can do to stimulate more jobs and do some more stuff out in the regions, out in the rural areas.
Thanks for that, Geraldine. Conor, you want to
kick off as quick as I can? Yeah, I don't have a prescription, but lots of, I do work with schools, and kids in schools ask me virtually every visit, what's the idea of the future, what's the next big idea, what's going to change things? And I say I don't know, but you know what, every day I meet people with ideas that I never thought of that really inspire me. I think we need to be able to harness those people. And if you look at the data, if you look at where jobs have been created, where business start is highest, it's actually outside of Belfast. The issue for Belfast, and if you look at the policy issue, is where public sector dependence has been highest, where dependence on big manufacturing has been greatest. That's where the entrepreneurial spirit is least well developed. So I actually think that the areas outside of Belfast have largely done it. If you look at the first derivatives, the Glen, Dimplex, the Norbrooks, in my own area, the story there is of local entrepreneurs with drive and commitment. The challenge, I think, for the state and those that work in the organs of the state is to listen to those people and harness those people. There's great knowledge, there's great innovation out there. Just listen and use them. That's my message.
for that. Owen?
I think my own view on that would be, and it probably feeds back into the corporation tax debate that we heard earlier on. I mean, I think corporation tax would be very important in two ways. I think for a attracting FDI, and though my suspicion on that is that most of those kind of big announcements will probably now head towards the urban areas, the bigger urban areas like Belfast and Derry and so on. But leaving that to one side, I think corporation tax, getting companies to scale up, incentivising companies to actually grow in local areas, the sort of companies that Conor is talking about, I think that's where you're going to see most job growth in areas that are outside the bigger urban areas. I suspect for most FDI coming in, they will look, particularly on the services side. Manufacturing might be slightly different, but on the services side, they will look for someone that has a younger urban population that they will want to go to. That said, if you spoke to companies like First Derivatives as to why they start up, where they have started up and where they've gone, there's a local attachment to that. And I think in a sense, probably policy now just needs to start thinking about championing companies where they are and entrepreneurship where it is, and pushing scale in those, and that'll be through things like encouraging innovation, encouraging management capability within companies that are in those local areas. So I think it's those sorts of things. None of that is easy, but I think that's the way it's got to be done.
Okay, thanks very much for that. And before we move over to yourself, Megan, maybe to respond to that, a theme that was emerging there was, and while Conor was clarifying the issue of the scales of two economies and two systems of government and the likes, what we have now, some rate maybe as a challenge, others operate and look at it and say it's an opportunity for us. The Taoiseach will become the president of the EU, and with that we will have other issues around cap reform, and indeed we have a very, very competent minister in the south of agriculture, Simon Coveney, who addressed a conference on the agri-food sector here for us a few months back there. So as we move to that, the opportunities that will be in there as well, Megan, and the challenges indeed for the entire country.
That the public are aware of that.
Okay, thanks very much for that. Congratulations, John, on your recent elevation as Mayor of UA. And could I just ask people to put their hands together, because I know I found this a very thought-provoking and we ran over a bit there, but you picked up on it, and it was very, very useful. Thank you, Steve. Thank you.
Every other session in a natural